Padre Mayo and the Archangels of Mercy. That's you guys. My story dates back to the early 1980s, just after I had started senior school in Derby. Now, I should say at this point that this is kind of a sibling-based confession. Yeah. Siblings do very bad things.
Okay, and this normally your reaction to it is going to be determined by where you came in the sibling.
Well, I think it may well be determined by whether you had a big sister or not. I think. But there is a level of violence in this confession, which I would say might give. I suppose this gets a PG certificate.
Okay.
It's got a PG.
Yeah.
Okay. I was the youngest of 4 children and had lived most of my life in the shadow of my older siblings. In fact, one in particular was my arch-enemy, a loud-mouthed tomboy sister just a couple of years older than me. She took delight in daily torture rituals, including tickling, pinching, and even swinging me round with the aid of her friends. So I'm sure you'll understand I spent most of my break times trying to avoid my sister and her cronies. Now, where we lived, there was a particular park with a boating lake, including stepping stones spanning the lake's inlet. Paddling pools, where many summer hours were happily spent, they were there too. On the day in question, our family was on the bus, making our way to the park. My sister was joined by 2 of her friends. Throughout the journey, I kept hearing them whispering and plotting something, and whenever I looked over, they would quickly stop and randomly point at things out at the window, as though they were even vaguely interested. Now, I didn't fancy going for a dip in the paddling pool, or the boating lake for that matter, so when the bus pulled up at the stop, I made a swift exit and ran for it. As I was running, I turned round and saw my sister and her friends in hot pursuit. But I had the upper hand because, try as they might, they were never any match for my speed and stamina, and I soon left them trailing dust. I managed to find a really good hiding place up a tree by the lake. Just before climbing up, I gathered a handful of skimming stones that I could use in my trusty catapult, a young lad's best friend back in those days.
Different times, everyone.
Yes, that's right. It's a catapult confession. In fact, they're the words written on the top of this. Over the next hour or so, I had fun seeing how far I could get the stones to skim across the water. And then I suddenly spotted my sister and her cronies on the stepping stones. They'd all taken off their shoes because the water was running high that day, meaning water was just covering the stones. And it was at that exact moment I had a brilliant idea. Earlier that day, I'd bought a brand new bag of Steelies.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You know them, what they are?
Yeah. The little ball bearings.
Little steel marbles. That's exactly right. So he's got a bag of those.
Bombers. What are they called?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, bombers.
My plan was to shoot a couple near to where she was standing using my catapult, which would have the consequence of her losing her footing and then falling into the river. What larks, Father Simon, that would be. I was a self-confessed catapult crack shot, and as there was a slight breeze that day, I knew I'd have to compensate by pointing my catapult slightly higher. My aim was just above my sister's head, but I knew gravity and the wind would do their bit, and the Steely should land just before the stones, thus creating the splash of water needed to make my sister jump. I released the catapult. I mean, what could go wrong?
No, nothing. I can't imagine. I mean, just above her head. Right, okay.
I released the catapult, and sure enough, I saw the Steely dropping as it made its way to the target. However, I noticed it wasn't dropping as much as I thought, and within the blink of an eye, my sister got an almighty shock as the Steely hit her smack bang on the side of her head, just above her ear. At this point, I had mixed emotions of, first one was, wow, what a shot. Second was, I'm dead.
Yeah.
I put my hands over my eyes momentarily, and when I took them away again, my sister had disappeared. Whilst I was wondering where she could have gone, there was, of course, an almighty splash, and what looked like the thing from the Black Lagoon rising up out of the water. It was my sister, covered in some sort of weed or algae. I saw her climb out of the water in a rage, and looking straight up at me, in the tree, she pointed and shouted, "You! You're dead, you are!" I was immediately struck with fear, the impending consequences of my foolish actions. What had I been thinking? I knew this was a really dangerous thing to do,
yes.
and I knew that I would never ever do it again because the consequences were completely unforeseen,
yes.
and I really should have thought about it, and now I realised that I'd been a fool.
Quite right. Well done.
I knew there was no point in running because even if I escaped now, she'd get me later on, so I thought it best to take my punishment like a man or boy. As I watched, my sister ran towards me, her face getting redder and redder. I pondered on whether I should climb down from the tree and accept my fate, or make her have to climb up to dish out the beating. I decided on the latter. I might have accepted my fate, but I wasn't going to make it easy for her, was I? By this point, my sister was now just a few feet away, and I heard her shout, "You two are dead!" I was momentarily confused. Had that bump on her head caused her to see double? Apparently not, because when I looked beneath me, I saw two young lads suddenly being thrown into the water by my sister. What I hadn't realised, Father Simon, was that while I'd been happily skimming stones up there in the tree, these two lads had been doing the same directly below me. I wish I could say that at this point I jumped down from my hiding place and confessed to my sister that she got the wrong culprits, but to my deep shame, I just sat motionless, hoping that my sister wouldn't look up in the tree and see her younger brother, whom she really loved so much. So after 30 years...
Wow.
It's time to seek forgiveness. Although not for sending my sister into the drink, I can still hear the satisfying ding noise as it hits her head. However, I do seek forgiveness from the two lads who were happily playing skimming until my sister charged at them like a raging bull. My sister, to this day, has no idea that it was me that caused her total humiliation.
Oh, superb.
And every time after that incident, when she'd be chasing me around the playground, I had the satisfaction of hearing that ding noise and knowing that she had got some of her own medicine. Well, that's Aaron's confession, and obviously you it's a very bad thing, and you don't copy Aaron, but then you don't copy Big Sister either, because neither of them were up to any good. Sister Bobby, stern face.
Well, it's difficult because obviously she's a terrible bully, and I understand how you want to teach her a lesson that you're not to be trifled with and all those things and stand up for yourself like people tell you. But the thing is, this is it, is when you do it, maybe you're not aware of all the consequences, which of course you saw and you got yourself into. The thing is, then you got two other boys into trouble and she attacked those. The thing is, it's really hard. I find it really difficult. I do forgive you for doing that to her because of course you weren't aware the circumstances. I don't forgive you for not owning up to it being you, because you could have gone home and said to your mum, look, I did this, you have to stop this. Bullies just have to be stopped, and that is not the way.
But you have to say, Catapult and a Steely is a very bad mixture.
Yes, it is, but I understand she drove him to it. What you should have done is gone back to your mum and dad and said, OK, look, I'm too frightened to walk home. Also, how dare she frighten you that much? So you're both forgiven and not forgiven.
At the same time.
At the same time.
Yes.
Brother Matthew.
I mean, isn't this just typical of younger siblings with the constant... Can't take a little bit of hijinks involving tickling from the elder sisters. I mean, come on. And has to resort to using his catapult up in a tree. I mean, really... Younger siblings, what on earth is wrong with you?
How many younger siblings do you have?
Well, I've got two.
There you go. Are you the eldest?
I'm the eldest.
I see.
And you know, and they came along and they were far cuter and all of that. Well, there's a little bit of comeback now, isn't it? Not quite so cute when you're falling in the lake with the ball bearing on the side of the head. So for that reason, I am going to forget.